Welcome, everybody. We now have a quorum, but we are going to wait another 5 minutes for a few board members to hop on, and we will be starting shortly. Thank you.
Member Fennell, if you could do a mic check for us, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Member Garrett, if you could do a video and a mic check for us, please. Member Garrett, if you could do a video and a mic check for us, please.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Great, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, there I am.
Perfect, and we can see you. Thank you so much.
Uh-huh. So I can leave, right? I mean, I can go back to stop the video.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Member Huang, if you could do a video and a mic check, please.
Hello.
Great, we can see and hear you. Thank you so much.
Great.
All right, Chair Music, this is the host. I just want to let you know that staff is ready when you are. It appears we do have a quorum, and all members that are supposed to be here are here. And just so other board members are aware, we are doing a quasi-hybrid meeting where Chair Muser is in the chamber. So if you can be a little patient with us, we are learning some new tech tonight, but hopefully it'll run smooth. Thank you.
We ready to begin? Okay, welcome everybody, members of the public and Cultural Heritage Board. I'd like to call to order the August 4th Cultural Heritage Board meeting. And Mr. Maloney, if we could do a roll call.
Thank you, Chair Muser. Let the record reflect that all commissioners are present except, or board members are present except Board Member Gale. I am so used.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. And before we get started, I just want to make a statement. We are doing the meeting a little bit different once again with COVID. Our staff liaison, Susie Murray, and myself are at City Hall, and with that, we are following COVID protocols, so you will see us both wearing masks through the meeting. We are trying out some new systems, so there may be a few hiccups along the way, so hopefully everybody will just kind of bear with us, and we'll get through this and eventually have a smooth running ship. With that, I'd like to say that due to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N2520 and N2920, which suspend certain requirements of the Brown Act, and the order of the health officer of the County of Sonoma to shelter in place to minimize the spread of COVID-19, the Cultural Heritage Board is conducting today's meeting in a virtual setting using Zoom webinar. Board members and staff are presenting from remote locations and/or practicing appropriate social distancing. Members of the public may view and listen to the meeting as noted on the city's website and as noted on the agenda. Members of the public wishing to speak during any of the items, public comment, or during public hearing items will be able to do so by raising their hand and will be given the ability to address the board. Moving on to item 2 of the agenda, approval of the minutes. Do we have any additions or changes from our fellow board members from the last meeting's minutes?
Chair Muser, we actually don't have any minutes to approve yet. I am still working on last meetings. They'll be coming soon.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Maloney. At this time, I'd like to open public comment. We now open public comment for any item not included in this meeting's agenda. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please select the raise hand button. If you are dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. Each speaker has 3 minutes. A countdown timer will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown. Mr. Maloney, if you could let us know if we have any members of the public that'd like to comment.
Thank you, Chair Muser. No one's raising their hand at this time, and it looks like we have 2 members of public logged in with us tonight.
Okay, thank you, and we'll just give them a couple of minutes just in case they want to comment. Okay, seeing no members of the public wanting to comment, I will close the public comment period. Moving on to item 4, board business. I'll start out by reading our statement of purpose. The Cultural Heritage Board shall consider the following matters, standards, guidelines, and criteria to the extent applicable in determining whether to grant or deny a permit. Whether the proposed change is consistent or incompatible with the architectural period of the building. Whether the proposed change is compatible with any adjacent or nearby landmark structures or preservation district structures. Whether the color, textures, materials, fenestrations, decorative features, and details proposed are consistent with the period and/or are compatible with adjacent structures. Whether proposed changes destroys or adversely affects an important architectural feature or features. The Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation and guidelines for rehabilitating historic buildings. Such other matters, criteria, and standards may be adopted by resolution of the Cultural Heritage Board. Staff Liaison Murray, I believe that concludes our board business at that time. Are you aware of any other board business?
I'm not aware of any other board business, but I have a few things when we get to the department reports.
Well, guess what? We're up. Item 5, department reports. So staff liaison, Susie Murray.
So, department reports, as Chair Muser said, we're kind of testing the waters with the hybrid meetings coming up in the relatively near future. I think our target at this point is to be online with hybrid meetings in October, and I will look to or open the opportunity up for future meetings for any of the Cultural Heritage Board members to get their toes wet and come on in and try the electronics here at City Hall before then, so in council chambers. I have another big announcement, and I will send this out to you. I'm fogging up here. I will send that out to you via text message and email and everything else as we get closer. But effective September 1st, we are going to kick off with 4:30 start times on our meetings. So staff has been working with the Planning Commission, with the Design Review Board, and the Cultural Heritage Board to get us all aligned with the same start time. And after polling everybody, it sounds like 4:30 is going to be the most workable time. So if you have any conflicts, please let me know as soon as possible. You don't need to do that tonight. You can email me privately. But if you could go ahead and update all your meetings so that you are here, you're not here 2 hours early. Let's see. And then I have a request. I have a request that item 7.3, which is the procedures, regulations, and rules document, that be continued to the agenda of September 1st, when we will also be having the Rosenberg's rules of order and conflict of interest discussion with the city attorney's office, and a presentation from the Deputy Director of Parks about Fremont Park. So something to look forward to. So with that, I will wait until the item is presented for Chair Muser to recommend that we go ahead and continue that last item. And that concludes my department reports.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. I actually need to jump back up to 4.2, board member reports. I skipped over that, just in case any of our Cultural Heritage Board members have anything they would like to report at this time.
I had two things just to mention. Not positive this is the appropriate time, but I wanted to report on meeting with Peter Stanley about the 34 6th Street project. I think a few other board members also met with him. So I went down to the site and he gave me kind of the brief synopsis of the project. I don't think there's anything substantive to share that people don't already know, but just wanted to report that I did that. And someone else reached out to me. I have not met with him yet, but it's scheduled for next week. And that's for 320 College Avenue, a proposal. He says that he has put it forward a few times, taking in comments from neighbors and the Design Review Board, and he wanted to show it to the Cultural Heritage Board before it comes before us in the fall. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Board Member Pretzelis. Any other members? Board Member Boren.
I don't know why the little raised hand didn't go up, but I also I went down to 6th Street and saw the project, and I also got the same email that Member Pretzelis had. So I don't have an appointment with them as yet.
Thank you, Board Member Boren. Okay, and the only other thing I'd like to mention is with this hybrid system, it's really important that we have board members here in the council chamber in the future. So I will always try to make a commitment to be here and come to the council chamber. I'm hoping the vice chair, if I can't make it, will come, and any other board members that feel comfortable with coming down to City Hall and do it will also join us. They've got it set up pretty well here. Probably the only thing is you got to wear a mask versus at home. You wouldn't have to wear a mask, but anyway, that concludes my report. With that, I'll close board member reports. Okay, moving on to item 6, statement of its abstentions by board members. Do we have any statement of abstentions at this time? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on then to our first item, 7.1, Downtown Station Area Historic Resource Evaluation Update. And our presenter is City Planner Sherry Meets.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Muser and members of the Cultural Heritage Board. I'm going to do the awkward shared screen, so bear with me for just a moment, please. So tonight, I'm before you to talk about the Downtown Station Area Historic Resource Evaluation Project. And some of you are well aware of the project, but we have some new faces on the board. So it's a nice opportunity to introduce the project, talk about how we got to doing the project, why we're doing it, what we're hoping to accomplish with the project. And I'll give a little bit of information about where we are, and then a big surprise. Not really a big surprise, but so the reason we started doing this, not only is it just a great idea, is the Downtown Station Area Specific Plan includes a policy that we need to evaluate and write a historic context statement about age-eligible projects, properties within the downtown station area. And these are going to be projects that are outside of existing preservation districts, but that are age-eligible for potential listing at a California, national, or local level. We're looking at properties that were constructed prior to 1975 in this project, and there's about 627 plus or minus that are being considered. And the reason we're doing the properties that are outside of an existing preservation district is that properties in the preservation districts, they have some protections and certain things that have to be looked at prior to any type of alteration or addition, that type of thing. And these other properties, the 627 that we're looking at, it's actually more than that, but we'll go with that as an estimate. They don't have any of those same protections. So that's why we focused in on those particular properties. And what's the evaluation include? First step is the reconnaissance level survey and inventory, and that has already been accomplished. The fieldwork for that has been done. The architects hit the ground running, and we're out and about taking pictures and looking at every property that could potentially show some signs of being historically significant. And for each of the properties, there will be a 523A form filled out, and pictures and a database and all that good stuff. The architects are in the process right now of drafting a historic context statement, which, as you all know, is really important in terms of determining significance of a property. It's not just architectural, it's where does it fit into the community's history and how we became the city that we are. Once that's done, they're going to do an intensive level survey with all the background research, who lived here, looking at anything that elevates the property beyond just what kind of shape it's in or how old it is, that could elevate it to being a significant resource. After that, they're going to complete a historic resource evaluation report, which will detail all the methodologies, what their findings are, their suggestions, maps, database, all of that good information. And once we have that, we'll bring it all back to you guys as a presentation of the final report and just everything about the project that up until that point. And why we're doing this, multiple reasons. As everybody knows, the downtown station area specific plan was passed with an eye on increasing development downtown. So that's been a goal to increase infill development and bring housing and additional development downtown. But we don't want that to be at the expense of properties that are historically significant to our community and our community members. So it's looking at both. It's looking at how we can increase infill development and how we can, at the same time, identify those properties that would need additional CEQA review or, would require a lot more work to touch, if you will. So it's twofold, and the ultimate goal is to just really find out what we have that's considered significant. In the background here, we sent out a request for proposals in November of last year. They were due in December. We received 4 very qualified proposals. We held interviews with all 4 firms on December 14th, and the selection committee included the members that you see here. We even had former Cultural Heritage Board member John McHugh as a great contributor to that process. After that, we ranked them, we scored them, we looked at who we thought would do the best job for us and could do the job for us, and Architectural Resources Group was selected. Council approved their contract in March of this year, and we had the first meeting with them in April of this year. And since then, like I mentioned, they've been on the ground running. They've been in the office, they've been at the library, they've been at the county facilities, getting any background information on all old building permits, as well as doing the reconnaissance survey and actually looking at buildings and neighborhoods. So that's kind of a background for where we're at. Mainly, we also want to have you join us if you can for a project kickoff meeting. It's after your next Cultural Heritage Board meeting. And you'll hear some of the same stuff that I just reported, probably in a little more detail, because we're hoping a lot of members of the public will attend and they won't be as familiar with the vernacular. And the Architectural Resources Group staff will be able to give you an overview of what they've found and their process and goals. We're also hoping to hear from the public about what they find important and what they're hoping to get out of this project, and have the opportunity to ask questions about the project. So the Zoom information is here. It's also on the website, which is dedicated to the project at letsconnectsr.com, Downtown Station Area Historic Resource Evaluation. So that's a good place for people to have an opportunity to even place on a map someplace they find that they want us to look more into, provide stories about why they consider a certain place important, ask questions. There's a frequently asked questions section where folks can go there and say, well, what does this even mean? What are these forms you're talking about? So we're trying to keep that up to date, and we'll obviously update it again after we have the public outreach meeting. But yeah, that's pretty much all I came here to do, was give you that little brief snapshot and answer any hopefully easy questions. The technical ones I'm going to leave to the consultant. And I'll stop sharing and come back and chat with you.
Thank you, Ms. Meath. At this time, I'd like to, let's see, should we go with public, if there's any public that would like to comment on her presentation? Yeah, well, let's do that next. So is there any members of the public who would like to make comment? We're not taking any action on this item, so it's just your opportunity to provide Ms. Meath with some input.
Yeah, Chair Muser, if you can open up the public comment officially, public hearing.
Okay, so I'm opening public comment officially.
Thank you. And with that, we have one hand raised. It is a Denise H. Just be one moment. Just be one moment. Thank you, Denise. We've now given you permission to speak. If you can unmute your microphone, and once you start, we will start the timer.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Hey, I had two questions. One is, where can we get more information on the company that's doing the surveys? The Architectural Resources Group, is that posted, their bio posted somewhere on the city website? And my second question is on this, on the evaluations, once they're done and the report is out, does that mean that a developer can develop on a site that is potentially historic and avoid having to do a CEQA portion of the process? Will that excuse them from being able to do the CEQA portion of any process that involved with that development? And those are my two questions.
Through the chair, would you like me to answer?
Thank you so much. Yes, go ahead and jump in there, Sherry.
Hold on, before we answer any questions, we need to close public comment. Go through it, and then you can answer questions at the end.
Okay, we'll give you an opportunity after we close public comment. So, Mr. Maloney, do we have any other public comment?
Thank you, Chair Muser. At this time, no one else is raising their hand.
Okay, with that, I'd like to officially close public comment.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Floor is yours.
So the two questions that were asked, I don't believe there is a bio posted on the project website. That's actually a fantastic idea, and I will make sure that that gets put up there. And in terms of avoiding CEQA on projects that are potentially historic, absolutely not. This is not going to, this would only streamline CEQA for properties that are not significant. If they are significant, they will absolutely have to go through a much more detailed and intensive CEQA process.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Mead. At this time, let's turn it back then to the board. Do we have any board members that have any questions for Ms. Mead? If so, raise your hand. Okay, seeing none.
It looks like we do have a hand raised.
Oh, we do have a hand.
Member Praetzelis.
Can I go?
Oh, there it is. Board member
yeah.
Fennell. Or no.
That's
I'm
all
sorry,
it's-
we're having technical
Yeah, and
difficulties here.
just so
I'm
the
trying
board's
to-
aware, Member
Board
Praetzelis.
member Praetzelis, let's start with you.
Just so the board's aware, this is the host. Like I said, we are working on some new tech tonight. The board members that are sitting at the dais don't have an easy screen that they can see your hands raised. They're having to look across the room at TVs. That technology will be changing soon, but just so you're aware, Chair Muser does not have a good visual of you guys at this time. So you might have to speak up if you do want to be called on.
Okay, no problem.
I'll also suggest that maybe you just wave your hand. Do it the old-fashioned way, because we can see you real clearly. We just can't see the little electronic hand.
Board member.
All right, so
you have the chair.
Okay, my question really kind of piggybacking on the other question, what role does the Cultural Heritage Board have in responding to any recommendations or evaluations that are put forth in this report? Because obviously it does have significance for, development down the road. So is there room for us to respond to evaluations that are made by this firm?
That is a wonderful question. I don't have a specific answer for that, and I will look into it and get back to you guys. I know we plan to bring the draft report to you before anything happens, becoming a final draft. But would you like to actually see, say, the DPR forms before we even get to a draft report? Is that what you were hoping for?
I think it would be important that we do stay involved and we do know kind of what direction the report's taking. So yes, I think.
Yes, I agree also. Board Member Boren.
What are the parameters of the downtown area? Is there are street definitions of the area?
There's actually a map on the website that I posted to you. We also have Planner Nicholson on, who is going to be giving a presentation later, who actually gives you exactly where that is. So she'll be able to fill in the blanks as well. And it's important when you consider that there are a lot of overlaps between the preservation districts and those properties, like I mentioned before, because there are already certain levels of protection involved for them, they weren't included in this process. It will only be the areas within the area that Planner Nicholson will show to you that are outside of the preservation districts.
Thank you.
Okay, any other board member questions? Not seeing any. I just have one question, and that involves actually the communication towards the property owners of the structures that are identified in this survey, as far as what type of communication, and also implications for the property owners, so that, for example, if and maybe you can answer this if it's identified as a significant structure, and they wanted to do something that would, within a historic district, require a major landmark alteration. Would these structures then require to have a major landmark alteration? And I know when the neighborhoods were formed, there was a lot of communication, with homeowners as to what implications would be if they became a historic district. And I'm just wondering if there's communication being planned or already maybe being done with the property owners of the identified structures.
We actually just have not gotten there yet. We've only done the initial reconnaissance level survey and have not reached out to any of the property owners that are flagged as potentially significant. The consultants will know more about their plan in terms of how to reach out to we'll work together, in other words, to develop a plan for that and a process for that. But that isn't something we've gotten to yet. And I apologize. This meeting was actually just supposed to be like an introduction, and some of these questions I can get answers to, and I'm happy to, and bring them back to the board. But I just don't have the information at this time.
Okay, and I'm sorry if we're really barraging you with a lot of questions and stuff, but we really appreciate you taking the time, and we know you'll look into these things, and I know we'll have a time that we'll be able to get back together and go further with this. So this just, first step.
Absolutely. So please, if there are other questions, I apologize that I can't answer them off the top, but I will do the research and get back to you. So feel free to ask the questions.
Okay, do we, any board members have anything else for Ms. Meads? Okay, with that, I think we can close item 7.1 and move to item 7.2. Bear with me here a second.
Chair Muser, can you speak up just a little bit louder? I'm having get closer.
Okay, yeah, sorry about that. Is that better? Okay.
Much, thank you.
It's the mask. Yeah. Okay, 7.2, study session, downtown station area specific plan overview and training. So staff will provide an overview of the recently adopted downtown station area specific plan. and highlight changes to the zoning code that affect the Cultural Heritage Board. And I think for our board members, it's important to recognize that the zoning code changes, which then affect our rules and regulations, which is 7.3, but it's going to get continued. But these zoning code changes are, it's kind of water under the bridge. It's already been adopted by this. So this station area specific plan has already been adopted. I think the purpose of this study session is, because we have new board members, is to bring everybody kind of up to date and give opportunity for you to clarify and ask questions, especially regarding areas where historic districts overlap, commercial areas within the station area plan. So anyway, without rambling any further, we'll go ahead. Planner Amy Nicholson is our presenter, and Amy, you've got the floor.
Great, thank you so much, Chair Muser and members of the Cultural Heritage Board. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my presentation here. Give me just a moment. I want to make sure my display is right. Okay, sorry about that. So as was mentioned, the purpose for this presentation is on the downtown station area specific plan and recent zoning code amendments, and then how those amendments affect the historic preservation districts and also the Cultural Heritage Board. As Chair Muser mentioned, the downtown station area specific plan has been adopted. It was presented to this board last summer, and then the zoning code text amendments were presented in the fall. These were adopted by the council in October and November of last year. And the purpose of this presentation today is really just to provide an overview of the specific plan and to detail some of the changes that were made to the zoning code, which impact decisions that this board makes. This slide here shows the land uses within the downtown station area specific plan area. And this area is roughly based on a half-mile radius from the Smart Station site. It's bounded by College Avenue to the north and Dutton Avenue and Imwali Gardens to the west, Sebastopol Avenue and Highway 12 to the south, and Brookwood Avenue to the east. The downtown plan created 4 new land use designations and zoning districts. And so those are the ones that are bulleted on the right portion of the slide. These land use designations allow for a broader range of land uses, and they also have their own set of development and design standards. if you look at this graphic, you'll note that there are large areas of yellow and orange, and these are colors that represent our low and medium density residential areas. So those areas which are primarily within our preservation district did not experience any change with the adoption of this plan. The new land uses are shown in the brown, pink, and red shades, and those areas are primarily outside of the preservation district, but there is some overlap. So I've circled those areas in yellow. So in these cases, these new standards that I'm going to be walking through would apply to projects within preservation districts. But again, these are just these areas shown in yellow here. This slide here shows floor area ratio maximum. So floor area ratio, or FAR, was introduced as a part of this downtown station area specific plan, and it helps to regulate building mass and form, but in a different way than what the city typically does, which is through density and height standards. So this map shows the various FAR maximums that are assigned to the properties that have the new land use designations. And these range from as low as 2, which is shown in the kind of light purple color, all the way up to 8, which is around kind of the core of downtown and Courthouse Square. So floor area ratio gives essentially a number, which is what's the total allowable building area that can be constructed on a site. And this number is derived from the product of the site in square footage multiplied by the FAR value. So for example, if there is a project site that is 40,000 square feet and the FAR is 2, then an 80,000 square foot building could be constructed. And this can be broken up into a number of different stories. So it could be a two-story building with 40,000 square feet per floor, or it could be, go up further and in height, but the overall square footage of each floor is reduced. So as I mentioned just a moment ago, all of the properties with those new land use designations do have FAR values, with the exception of a few contributor properties, which are found along B Street in the St. Rose Preservation District. And many of the board members will remember that discussion. And again, the areas within the preservation district that have FAR values assigned to them are circled here in yellow. Another item to note, although FAR doesn't regulate height directly, properties that are within one of the city's preservation districts are within what's called a historic combining district. And so these areas do not allow for building heights that exceed 35 feet unless the Cultural Heritage Board or the City Council make specific findings to allow that height increase. So that standard still applies regardless of the downtown plan. There are a number of new site design and building placement standards, and these are again implemented through those 4 new land use designations. And these standards address items like building setbacks and tower separation requirements, the location of on-site parking, and also requirements for shadow analysis. Building design is also regulated through these 4 new land use designations. This is a little bit atypical for the city of Santa Rosa. We typically have a lot of development standards for things like setbacks and height and lot coverage, but not so much for design. Design is typically, we typically look at the design guidelines, which are more discretionary or flexible in nature, but there are a number of design standards that are now included in the zoning code for properties that fall within those new land use designations. And these design standards address a variety of concepts, including dimensional relief and the requirement for four-sided architecture or consistent material use, transparency, and also the inclusion of ground level elements. The downtown station area specific plan also includes what are called transition areas and an overlay area. So this map here shows where those additional standards apply. And I'm going to walk through each of these, spending more time on the neighborhood transition, which is most, I think, relevant to this board. But this map shows the triangles for where these standards apply. And so you will note that there are a number of blue triangles that are around the preservation districts. The preservation districts are shown on this map in that kind of beige color. So the neighborhood transition was developed to reduce the visual impact of new development on most of the lower density residential areas, in particular the preservation districts. Depending on the location of the new development, either the first two bullet points or sub bullet points would apply, or the third one. So this transition requires front setbacks that are more extensive than what would typically be required. They also require building step backs over 3 stories and a daylight plane over 6 stories. This transition also prohibits surface parking areas between the sidewalk and the building frontage. In cases where new development would impact existing preservation districts, for example, like on Santa Rosa Avenue, where we have Burbank Gardens, we would apply these standards to the rear side of that development. And so those step backs would help to reduce the visual impact. Just to quickly walk through other transitions, there's a downtown transition, which requires that buildings step back an additional amount above certain segments of 4th and 5th Street. There are 3 segments along the Santa Rosa Creek with an activation area. And so any new development there is required to promote both the use and visibility of the creek. And then there's the active ground floor overlay. This applies pretty broadly throughout the downtown. It doesn't regulate allowed uses, but it does require that new development enhance the pedestrian experience. Some other changes made to the zoning code as a result of this plan include some additions to the historic combining district. This is basically all of our preservations fall within this combining district, and it includes those additional protective standards like the 35-foot height requirement. It also includes a number of character defining elements for our 8 preservation districts. And so essentially this section on character defining elements was bolstered up with a lot of information from a Cultural Heritage Board resolution 209. This was adopted back in 2006, which helps to set the historic context for our preservation districts for any developer, architect, or property owner. And then these district-specific frameworks can be used by city staff, this board, the city council, when evaluating projects within these specific preservation districts. There were also some amendments made to our historic and cultural preservation chapter of the zoning code. One is minor. It looks small, but it's important, and it's that the 2017 Secretary of Interior Standards is cited. There was also an addition of a few minor exemptions from the landmark alteration process. One example being the addition of skylights that could not be seen from the public right-of-way. one of the bigger changes that I wanted to spend some time talking through was a change to the design review and landmark alteration process. So one change is that if there is a project which requires both design review and Cultural Heritage Board approval, that project would come before both boards at the same time for concept review. And so this concept review provides an opportunity for both of the boards to provide comments that are specific to that board's purview. And then the applicant team can take that information, modify their plans, and when they come back, hopefully they've been able to include some of those considerations. So in the past, this was actually an optional process for it to be a joint review meeting, but staff has found that it is effective to hear from both the boards at the same time. And so that is now memorialized in the code. And then we also made a modification to the design review approval process. In the past, the Cultural Heritage Board acted on the design review entitlement with the design review board members. Now those processes are entirely separate. So the Cultural Heritage Board acts independently on landmark alteration permits, and the design review board acts independently on design review permits. And then one additional change, the Cultural Heritage Board quorum section was modified. In the past, we had to have four board members vote in favor of a project or deny a project for that action to be considered. Now that requirement has been modified to be the majority of the quorum voting one way or another. And this just helps to keep projects moving through the process either way. This slide here reflects some added or amended criteria for decision. When the Cultural Heritage Board receives a resolution that staff has drafted recommending either approval or denial of a project, these are things that staff has considered through their review, and then also that the board considers prior to taking action on a landmark alteration permit. So these four bullet points on this slide reflect what actually has been added or amended. And then the next slide will show all of the criteria. So 2 additions are for zoning code consistency and also general plan and specific plan consistency. These weren't previously included, but considering that the Cultural Heritage Board and staff are really looking that projects are implementing these guiding documents in the city code, this felt like to be an important add. Another change relates to compatibility of proposed development. And so the first part of this criteria remains the same. The modification is that the compatibility occurs with the new development and properties that have been identified as contributors to that respective district. So that defines that criteria a little bit more. And then the fourth change was updating that Secretary of Interior standard year. So this slide reflects each of the criteria with the unchanged ones called out here in bold. So this, just for informational purposes, one is that the consistency of the proposed change is consistent with the original architectural style and details of the building. The consistency and/or compatibility of proposed textures, materials, fenestration, and decorative features and details with the time period of the building's construction. Whether the proposed change will destroy or adversely affect important architectural features. And then the last one, which would be other matters or criteria adopted by resolution by the board. And I'm not aware of anything that falls into that category, but Ms. Murray might be able to add more to that. So that concludes my presentation. I'll stop screen sharing and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nicholson. At this time, I'd like to open public comment. And this is opportunity if we have any members of the public who would like to ask any questions or make any comment to Ms. Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair Music. At this time, no one is raising their hands, and we have one member of the public in attendance on the Zoom meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Maloney. I'm not seeing any members of the public wanting to comment. I'm officially closed public comment. And like to turn this back to our board members. If any of our board members have questions for Ms. Nicholson. Okay, not seeing any at this time. I do have one, and if you'll bear with me just for a second. And flagged it, I just got to find it here. Okay, and not to put you on the spot, hopefully, and if you don't have an answer to this, that's okay. But on the criteria for decision, I was just wondering if you could, on the item that says whether proposed change implements the general plan and any applicable specific plan, you could expand on that a little bit, or maybe give a little better definition of what that statement means.
Sure. I'm just pulling up that slide so I could read it. So that, and Susie or Ms. Murray might be able to add on to my comments, but essentially we're looking to make sure that a project is consistent with goals and policies that are in the general plan and any specific plan. So if we're talking about the downtown, we would want to make sure that a new development is consistent with the plan as a whole. So it's the design, the use, if we're not talking about properties with FAR, that the proposed density falls within the density range that's within the general plan. And these are things beyond just development standards and design and density too. They also include consistency with policies, circulation policies, or open space policies. So it is a lengthy review that planning staff do when we're looking at projects. We want to ensure that they're consistent with those vision documents that the city has for specific areas, such as the specific plan area or just the broader city at large. Not sure if that helps to answer that question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Sure.
Any other board member questions? Ms. Nicholson. Board Member Bourne?
Yeah, I was just curious what your time frame on all of this are. Any projects in the works? Is it all still being planned?
So the changes that I just went through have been in effect for, I guess, about 9 months now. But we do have projects that are coming in our downtown plan area, and so we're getting the experience of using these new sections of our zoning code and reviewing development review projects for consistency with the new specific plan.
And this is Susie, and I'm just going to go ahead and chime in and say that there are actually several projects that are coming down the pike to you guys right now, which is a part of the reason for all these trainings. So you do have several larger residential projects coming to you for review. And the other thing that I would like to comment on is that during those concept design meetings that are now required for those types of projects downtown that require both a landmark alteration and a design review, it's really the Cultural Heritage Board's opportunity to let not just the applicant, but the design review board and staff know what it is about those projects that you think needs to be protected. Character defining elements, if it's not consistent in the neighborhood that it's in, and whatnot. So express your concerns at that point and give the applicant and staff an opportunity to report back to you when that project comes to you as a hearing item, an action item. And when it does come to you as an action item, it will only be to the Cultural Heritage Board as a landmark alteration. You will not be involved going from this point forward, or since the approval of these changes, you will not be involved in the design review. So.
Yeah, and if I can chime in also, the nice thing is there's a zoning code that's applicable to the design review board that identifies historic areas as well. So the design review board actually has some responsibilities when looking at applications that are within historic districts, or if they're have been identified as a historic structure. Any other questions for board members? I guess I should ask also, Board Member Bourne, did that answer your question? Okay. Well, I guess with that then, I'd like to thank Ms. Nicholson for excellent presentation. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and inform us. I know it's going to be an ongoing process, these overlaying districts, H districts, within the station area plan. I know of 2 projects on my mind right now that are coming up, and it'll be an interesting process when they come before us to the board.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions that the board might have.
Okay, with that, we'll close out then item 7.2. Move on to item 7.3. And item 7.3, which was introducing the Cultural Heritage Board procedures, rules, and regulations, which will supersede the existing rules and regulations. We have been requested by staff to continue this item to a future meeting so that there can be some further research and evaluation. It also gives us as board members an opportunity to communicate with Ms. Murray as we read these, the new zoning changes and zoning codes, and have questions. And just, just to say again, the way the sequence of events has happened is the downtown station area plan created the zoning code changes that affected the Cultural Heritage Board, and those zoning code changes then affected our rules and regulations, and so it's kind of a tumble-down effect. Some of the things, there's probably some flexibility in the rules and regulations, and other things there may not be because the zoning code dictates, that particular item. But anyway, but don't hesitate to ask questions or make comment or suggest changes to Ms. Murray. She's very good at getting back to us and letting us know what we can do, what we can't do. So with that continuing, that item, I think that's the last item on our agenda. And I'd like to go ahead and call for adjournment and thank everybody for their presence today and invite you to come sit with me at City Hall at the next meeting. So if you feel free. So this meeting's adjourned.
Thank you. Great job.